Okay, great. It is 12:01, so I'll go ahead and get started. My name is Jessica Keegan. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm coming to you from the Office of Economic Empowerment. And we are really excited today to be partnering with the folks from the Boston SEC today to talk about crypto assets specifically. We've recently learned that that's the proper term instead of cryptocurrency. And we're really excited to be with the experts today, and I'll let them introduce themselves in a moment. But before we get into the meat of the discussion, I'll just give you some disclaimers. If when you heard me say the Office of Economic Empowerment, you had no clue what that was, don't worry, we'll go over what that is really quickly. Then we'll dive into the discussion about crypto assets, and then we'll have some dedicated time for questions and answers. So the Office of Economic Empowerment is a department within the Massachusetts Office of Treasurer and Receiver General. So we are a state office. I would say that our three main pillars are creating a brighter future for children across the state, offering free and accessible financial education for all, and of course, closing the racial and gender wealth gap. So that's part of the reason why we are here today, as this is a topic that we find has been highly requested. We did pull out folks who've been to our previous sessions, and they did want to be talking about this. I will show everybody a video that's just 1 minute long to give you a little bit more of a deep dive about who OEE is, just so you can use our free financial education as needed and come to more Money Talk Tuesdays.
Your financial well-being is our priority. The State Treasurer's Office of Economic Empowerment is here with free financial education to make your tomorrow even brighter. If you live in Massachusetts, you can access no-cost resources and online training, all designed with you in mind. Take it at your own pace or build community and learn with others. We offer help with budgeting, building credit, education and vocational training savings, financial wellness for families and communities, maximizing your money, planning for retirement, and more. Whoever you are, wherever you are in your financial journey, and whatever your money goals may be, we have the tools you need to succeed. Get started on your path toward a healthier financial future. Visit mass.gov/treasury/empowerment to learn more.
Great. So if you would like to learn more about our programs, for example, right now we are running our Worth and Wealth programs, which is specifically targeted towards women in Massachusetts. One cohort is in English, one cohort is in Spanish. It's sessions like these, plus the ability to speak one-on-one with a financial coach. We'll be able to send those links out to everybody who's interested. But I'll talk a little bit more about what we're here for today. You may have noticed that this is a Zoom webinar and not a Zoom meeting. This meeting will be recorded, and the recorded will be uploaded to our YouTube afterwards. A lot of folks have asked us already for slides or recordings. Don't worry, after this session, we will send out an email with the recording for you to review for future reviews. As you may know, we are a government office, which does mean that we are subject to public record laws, and so the Q&A is not anonymous. However, anything that you put in the Q&A function will show as anonymous. You will not be able to turn on your camera. You will not be able to turn on your microphone today, but that's completely okay. You'll be able to use the chat and the Q&A. So if you have any questions or if you're having any technical difficulties, reach out to us through the chat and ask your questions in the Q&A. We'll be able to answer those questions with some dedicated time at the end of the session as well. And once you select exit from this session, a survey will pop up with just some questions that we can use to continue to improve this program, or if you had any questions that may not have been answered today. So I will just say thank you and turn it over. If you would like to learn more about our upcoming events or sign up for Worth and Wealth, you can always check out our mass.gov page and feel free to reach out as needed. I'll stop sharing my screen and turn it over to our experts who are visiting us today to let you all introduce yourselves. And thank you again so much for talking about crypto and crypto assets today.
Hi, my name is Sylvester Fontes, and I am the Regional Director of the Boston office of the Securities and Exchange Commission. Most of you may know what the SEC does. Just a little bit of background on the SEC. It's the federal agency responsible for enforcing our nation's federal securities laws at the federal level. And one of the areas that we've been spending a lot of time on these days is the crypto space. I will be joined today by three of my colleagues: Amy Guazda, who's an assistant director in our enforcement division here in Boston; Peter Moores, who's a staff attorney in enforcement; and Jen Brady, who makes up a member of our team that collects what we call TCRs here in the Boston office, or tips, complaints, and referrals. She could talk a little bit more about what she does. But before we get started, one quick note of business that I've got to do, and that is our standard disclosure. Like the Mass Office of Economic Empowerment, we are a government agency, and so we have some disclosures. The main one is that everything that we say here today is all the statements we made are made in our official capacities. However, they are our views. They do not represent the views of the commission or of the chair or any other commissioner or any other staff member or division or office within the commission staff. Again, going back to the SEC, we have 11 regional offices. Boston is responsible for the New England region. There are about 200 individuals who work out of the Boston office. Half of those individuals are in enforcement, and half of those individuals are part of our exams team. And then there are other members such as Jen, who interface with the public. One of the things that I am most proud of so far, a little background of myself: I am a lawyer by training. I started at the SEC originally back in 1998 and left in 2011. And went out in the industry and worked for about 11 years, and then came back to the SEC staff earlier this year in January. One of the things that I'm most proud of is the staff that we have here in the Boston office, including the individuals who will be speaking with you here today, putting this presentation on. The other thing that I'm really proud of is the fact that we now have in the Boston office a unit that is dedicated to the space, to on the enforcement side, enforcing the federal securities laws on the side out of Boston. The leader of that group in Boston is Amy, who's on here with us today. And I'll turn it over to her right now. She can talk a little bit more about herself and what that unit does. At the end of the day, you're going to have a lot of information thrown at you today. You don't have to memorize it all. One of the things we want to emphasize is if you ever have any questions in this area, Jennifer and her team are excellent in responding to queries that we get from the public. And not only queries, but if you see anything out there that is suspicious to you, just doesn't make sense, don't hesitate to pick up the phone and call us. You're not bothering anyone. It's part of our job to do that sifting. You don't have to do that sifting. So if you see anything, pick up the phone, don't hesitate. That's the bottom line for me. I will now hand it over to Amy to talk about herself and the unit we just stood up in the Boston office.
Oh, thank you, Sylvester. And welcome, everyone. We really thank you for taking the time to join us today. We hear all find this topic very, very interesting and exciting, and hope you do too. As Sylvester said, I'm an assistant director in the SEC's Boston office in our enforcement division. What that basically means is I oversee investigations into potential violations of the securities laws. I've been at the SEC for a while, for about 12 years. And during that time, I've worked on a real range of types of investigations. And I would say about 5 years ago, I started to work on a number of cases that involved crypto assets. And, at the time it was evolving and new, and there was a lot going on. And I really found the work very interesting, very challenging. It was exciting to get to learn about it. And as Sylvester said, within the last few months, I have become a supervisor in the SEC's what is called the Crypto Assets and Cyber Unit. And just to give a little background, the SEC has 6 specialized units, and they all focus on different areas. There are areas that are seen as critically important ones, where bringing staff together throughout the SEC. The SEC has has a main office in DC and a number of regional offices, and staff come together to focus on certain key focus areas, one of which is this crypto and cyber world and unit. The unit was formed in 2017. It's a newer unit, and it's also a rapidly it's growing. There's a lot of things for us to look at. So we are adding attorneys and other specialists in the unit, and people bring together specialized knowledge and experience that they gain from working on these types of investigations. As you probably can tell from the name of the unit, focus areas include looking at offerings of crypto assets, looking at exchanges, which are trading platforms for them. We also look at cybersecurity, and that includes public companies. What are they disclosing about cybersecurity risks or potential events if they had some kind of hack that happened to them? Those are also areas that we look at. And it's a relatively new unit in Boston, but we have several attorneys who are just going to be focused on working on these types of cases going forward, along with me. And Jen and Peter are going to go into more details about some of the cases that the SEC has been involved in. But just to give you like a quick couple cases that the unit has brought somewhat recently, we've brought a number of cases that are focused on crypto asset trading platforms, including one called Binance Holdings. Binance operated the largest crypto asset trading platform in the world. We also also involved entities related to Binance Holdings, as well as the founder of it. It's a litigated action, so it's ongoing, and we've alleged a number of violations. These include potential misrepresentations and also failing to register with the SEC. We also, the SEC has filed a case against a crypto asset entrepreneur named Justin Sun. He had 3 companies, and they were doing a number of unregistered offerings of crypto asset securities, and also doing what we call market manipulation, where he and people connected to him were kind of on both sides of trades, where they were trying to make it look like trading in a crypto asset was just, there was, it was being actively trading, but it was just him and people he knew kind of doing it to make it appear that there was interest in active trading. He also was involved in paying celebrities to tout crypto assets, and that's something we'll probably talk more about. If you are seeing on social media, people whose names you recognize, the SEC brought a settled action against Kim Kardashian and Paul Pierce. If they're being paid to tout crypto assets under the security laws, they are required to disclose how much they were paid and that they are being paid. And that's something that the SEC brought action because people like Kim Kardashian did not make those disclosures. So those are just a few examples of what we've been doing in the space. And I'll turn it over to Peter and Jen to go into more details.
Thank you, Amy. So good morning, everybody, or good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Peter Moores, and I'm a senior counsel in the Enforcement Division at the SEC. As mentioned before, the Enforcement Division at the SEC is responsible for basically investigating violations of the securities laws and bringing actions primarily in federal court against violators to protect investors. And oftentimes money recovered from those violators is provided to victims. So personally, I began working in the crypto space a little over 5 years ago in conducting investigations. And so I've been involved in a number of different types of investigations in the crypto space, a lot involving sort of the offer and sale of crypto asset securities. And notably, that includes the Ripple case that people might have heard of, or Library case, which involved the offer and sale of XRP and LBC respectively. So I think Jen and I are going to go in and talk further, but I'll let her introduce herself before we start getting into a little bit of the meat of the discussion.
Great. And my name is Jen Brady. I'm also an attorney in the Boston office. As Sylvester had previewed, I work in the group. We're called the Office of Market Intelligence, but we process incoming tips, complaints, and referrals from members of the public, from other regulators, really from all sources. So part of my job is to take calls and questions and tips regarding all things related. I put in the chat our contact information and also a link to file a tip, and I'll probably repeat it a few times. But if you are looking to report information or if you have questions, just take a look at the chat for that contact information. And now I'll turn it back to Peter.
Thank you, Jen. So I think one of our main goals today is just sort of an outreach and provide information about the crypto space, perhaps some risks sort of inherent in the space itself, as well as to answer any of the questions that you may have. So first, I just want to provide a little bit of background information to make sure we're all sort of on a relatively even playing field in the conversation today. So wanted to talk about, what are crypto assets briefly. We're the Securities and Exchange Commission, so our focus is really talking about securities. And so how are some crypto assets, how are they securities? And then just talk a little bit about the different sort of players or just generally the way that the market, public market for crypto assets is structured. So you have a better sense when we're talking about some of the pitfalls later on, what the different components are. So fundamentally, just taking a step back, the securities laws and the SEC and enforcing those really follows a principle that fulsome disclosure, like sunlight, is the best disinfectant. And so what is, imperative under the securities laws and the way that the SEC, I think, approaches this is really that, fulsome disclosure with accurate, truthful information, allowing investors to be able to make, the most informed decisions for their own purposes is really important in this space and in all sorts of securities as well. And so when it comes to most of the enforcement efforts in the crypto space are really to make sure that investors can make the best decisions for themselves. The SEC is not here to tell or advise any investor what is the best investment. It is really to make sure that investors get the most information and truthful information, and so that they're not being manipulated or lied to. And so again, let's just, I think, talk about what is a crypto asset. We've sort of been talking crypto assets, but there are better and more technical definitions out there. But for today's purpose, let's say a crypto asset is a digital representation of value or rights that uses cryptography and blockchain technology, right? So that's probably still a bit of a head scratcher. So just unpack a little bit of that. So a crypto asset is going to be like computer code. It's going to be digital. It's not something tangible, right? And then where is the computer code sort of recorded, right? It's going to be on ledgers, or you can think of spreadsheets or, pieces of paper that are sort of saved, files that are saved on computers all around the world and that are connected by the internet. And so you can think of the spreadsheets as basically long lists, like the blockchains are just long lists of information. And oftentimes the information that's recorded on the blockchain are going to be transactions. And so cryptography technology is basically going to be used to try to secure the blockchain so that you can't have one person rewrite the information on those ledgers or dictate what it says. So that is sort of what a crypto asset is and the technology that underpins it. Now, crypto assets were sort of born out of an effort to develop a system by which information was securely kept and that people could interact without having to trust each other. And so much like the idea behind the internet, the goal was to avoid any single point of failure, to sort of decentralize the system. Going back, crypto assets were started with Bitcoin in 2008. And then today, at least according to CoinMarketCap, which is a website that tries to aggregate various information for crypto assets, and by no means am I endorsing it or saying all the information on CoinMarketCap is accurate. And we're going to go into a little bit about some of the inaccuracies in the marketplace. But it says that on CoinMarketCap, it says there's up to 22,000, more than 22,000 crypto assets in existence and that have traded at some point, which is a huge, huge number if you can think about it, right? 22,000 around the world. And so it's really important to know what the information and the particulars are for any of those crypto assets. Now, when I said those 22,000 crypto assets, that doesn't include things, those are fungible tokens. And you might have heard the expression non-fungible tokens or NFTs. You might have seen, image files that are NFTs. And so that's not even including any of the NFTs. That's just talking about fungible tokens. And so what is a fungible token versus a non-fungible token? Again, just a little bit of a primer. So non-fungible means that there's some sort of particular thing that's going to be attached to that computer code. Like I said, like an image file of an ape or something else. But in terms of the crypto assets that are fungible, those are supposed to be interchangeable and have the same characteristics across each type. So, I believe, supposedly every Dogecoin is just like every other Dogecoin, which is not true with NFTs. All right. So again, I'll generally be checking the chat function here. So if there are questions that pop up, and I know I'm talking fast and I'm probably talking gibberish, so please, if you have a question, just place in the chat and we'll try to address it. All right. So like I said, the SEC is focused on securities, and so that's crypto asset securities primarily. And so what is a crypto asset security? So the securities laws actually they define what is a security by providing a long list of items. And that can include stocks, bonds, transferable shares, types of options, and sort of participation in any profit sharing agreement. There's, a crypto asset could be a representation of any of those different types. So you could have a crypto asset that sort of functions as a profit sharing mechanism. In the space that most commonly, the crypto assets are categorized as investment contracts. And so you might say, like, well, what is an investment contract? And that was defined by the Supreme Court of the United States back in a case in the 1940s called Howey. And so you might have heard discussions about a Howey test, and it comes from that Supreme Court case. And there's been a lot of other subsequent cases that have sort of developed what the definition of an investment contract is. And fundamentally, the Howey definition of what an investment contract is basically to be an investment of money or something of value into a common enterprise with an expectation of profits to be derived from the efforts of others. So that's definitely another mouthful, right? And we could talk more about it if that's helpful, but that's basically, it's a common sense, right? If somebody's trying to raise capital upon representations that, somebody's efforts, most likely their efforts, are going to raise either the price of a crypto asset or somehow provide profits to investors. So if you think about it, it really boils down to the economic reality of, why are people doing this? Why are people selling, offering to sell the crypto asset? And we could talk more a little bit later about the examples, but sort of in general parlance, is someone offering a crypto asset with promises that the price of the asset will rise in the future after they use the money, or someone uses the money to develop a better, say, crypto ecosystem or new developments on their platform. So if the crypto asset was offered and sold as a security, then the offering and trading of the security is subject to the securities laws and regulatory oversight by the SEC. So essentially, it's like if it is offered and sold as a security, then there's a lot of sort of rules and laws that attach, and the SEC is seeking to protect investors by enforcing those rules and requirements. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit. All right, so I did see some questions popping up in the chat, and that's good, and I'll try to weave them into the answers. One of the questions is, do independent regulatory bodies exist to regulate crypto? And the answer generally is yes, right? So I'm not sure exactly what independent is supposed to mean there, but the Securities and Exchange Commission has within its jurisdiction the regulation of investment contracts, and that would include crypto asset securities. Now that also, and the SEC is not alone when it comes to crypto assets. Crypto assets that weren't offered or sold as securities would be regulated by either other federal agencies or international agencies that also have jurisdiction. And there's also state regulatory agencies and state laws, blue sky laws, for example, that apply to crypto asset securities. And the state regulators have been active in the space. We'll probably talk a little bit about the SEC action against Coinbase later on this afternoon. But I think at least 10 state regulators had brought a joint case or individual cases against Coinbase this summer, alleging that Coinbase had violated their state securities laws. Okay, the market, right? So not surprisingly, given the sort of profit-driven purpose behind a lot of the crypto assets and crypto asset securities, many of the crypto assets are being sold as investments, and some of the components of the crypto asset marketplace, at least superficially, resemble that of the standard securities market. So there are crypto asset trading platforms that when you look at them, you'd think that this looks like, a New York Stock Exchange or some other exchange market. There are entities, again, that are operating what resemble at least, kind of like a broker or a dealer in the marketplace. And same thing when you looked at what's referred to as a clearing agent, you'll see some entities that seem to be functioning in that way, at least superficially on their face. And so some of the examples of crypto asset trading platforms, in fact, that the SEC has alleged were in violation of the securities laws include Coinbase, Bittrex, Binance, which Amy had referenced before. And so fundamentally, the way that those work is that investors can or could get accounts at these entities, these exchanges, like brokerage accounts, or at least resemble brokerage accounts, from which they can look at trading data, they can make trades through web and mobile applications, and buy and sell crypto assets. And so just another component of how this works is sort of in order to make a trade, an investor would then have their crypto assets in a digital wallet, and then they will send those over to the digital wallet of the exchange to be able to do trading. Now, when we talked about beforehand the blockchain, which is a continuous list of all of the transactions, one key thing to note is that a lot of these sort of centralized crypto asset trading platforms, the trades that exist on them do not occur sort of quote on chain. So they're not actually recorded on the blockchain. They occur off chain. And so the records of them are really only kept by the crypto asset trading platform itself. And so that's different than the sort of traditional securities market, which has a little bit more transparency in the record keeping as well. So I've talked for a while about the components and crypto assets, et cetera, in general. And I'm going to take a look at some of the questions in the chat, but Jen was going to then dive into just sort of some of the risks that you might find in crypto asset security transactions or other types of cases in general.
Thanks, Peter. And just before I go into that, we have a couple of poll questions. So I thought I would gauge, we're seeing in the chat that there might be some variation in terms of familiarity with this topic. So the first poll question I wanted to ask is, and I think Jessica's going to pull it up for us, have you invested in crypto assets? This is not required, but if you want to just take a minute and answer that question, it's asking whether you've invested in crypto assets, if you're considering it but have not yet invested, and whether you're not planning to invest in crypto assets, maybe you're just curious to hear about the topic. So I'll give you just a few more seconds with that. And while you're looking at that question, I'll note that we've had a few people ask about whether this is recorded, and it is. In addition, we also have investor bulletins on this topic that will cover some of the information we're talking about today. We also have a spotlight page about enforcement actions. So we'll include some of that information in the links in the chat as well, the links to that. But if you forget all those links, you don't copy them, you can just go to investor.gov and you will find the investor bulletins I'm mentioning here. There's a spotlight page on crypto assets there. Okay, so we can go ahead and close this poll. Great, so it looks like we have a variety of individuals, some that are just interested in the topic and some that have already invested. And I want to just go right into our second poll question while I have you here, which is, have you received solicitations to purchase crypto assets? And if so, how? And this is going to go into the topic that I'm talking about. I'm going to talk about risks, as Peter mentioned, in crypto assets, but also some investment fraud generally, specifically with an eye towards what we're seeing increase utilizing crypto assets. So we'll give you just a little bit longer with this question. And I will note that crypto assets can be used both as the medium for fraud, but also as the subject of fraud. So I think we can close this poll and just get an idea of where we are, and I'll go right into some types of fraud. So I'm seeing social media seems to be the main source, as well as email and text messages for those who have been solicited by crypto assets. So I'll go ahead and address those as we're talking. But what I really want to start with is just a couple of the frauds that we're seeing. And you can see these in any type of investments with any type of products, but we're seeing an increase with these involving crypto assets. And the one I really want to talk about is called pig butchering. It's not my name, but that's the name of it. And it combines a romance scam with an investment fraud component. What pig butchering is individuals or fraudsters are taking time to build trust from their victims. So what happens is you might get, if anyone's gotten, I've certainly gotten them, text messages or DMs in social media, posts that say, hey, John, I am not going to make it to Thanksgiving dinner. And you reply, I'm not John. They might keep talking to you. They're trying to engage you with an accidental text message or social media post. This is a very common way that they start victims engaging in their fraud. Then what happens is over time, and I'm not talking just in one phone conversation or in one message chain, we're talking it can be weeks or even months. They build a relationship with an individual. So they're getting to know things about your family, they're getting to know your hobbies, your interests, your work, things that you are interested in. And then after a period of time, once that trust has been built, they, amongst other topics of conversation, will start telling you that they have invested in crypto assets or crypto asset securities. Here's a screenshot of how much money they made. This is the platform that they use, this website that they used. They're not asking you to give them money. They're just telling you about the information and how much of a return they got with what seems to be no risk. Well, first of all investments have risk. So that is a big red flag if you ever hear that. In addition, if there's high returns, promise of high returns with little to no risk, that is a big red flag. So now going back to pig butchering, we have this long period of time, which what surprises individuals, because by then there is this connection. So when you're starting to see that your friend or your partner that you originally met through DMs or misplaced text message is making money, that can entice you to invest as well. And they also employ one of the tactics that fraudsters typically use, which is dangling phantom riches. And what I mean by that is they don't just say you can earn 10% in a day. They say if you invest in this, like, don't you need help for your kids' college? This could get you there. They're really trying to make that connection emotional to try and get you to part with your funds through emotions rather than having you take a step back. The other part of this is the websites they send you to, oftentimes they might only be up for a short period of time. Sometimes they'll even let you take withdrawals, a small amount of withdrawals, to give this air of legitimacy. But then when you start to take larger withdrawals, or you act like you might need the funds, that's when they might start to disappear or stop talking to you. And then the other thing with pig butchering is towards the end of the scam, it could happen at any point, but typically towards the end, you'll also see another type of scam that happens in other types of fraud as well, called advanced fee fraud. And with that, before you can take your withdrawal, they're saying you need to give us taxes or fee if you want to withdraw your funds. And sometimes this can seem legitimate. Say, for example, if anybody has cashed out their retirement account, you are sometimes told if you cash it out before a certain age, you need to pay taxes and fees to the IRS, and that is legitimate. But with this, they kind of prey on that kind of idea by saying, give us taxes and fees. The difference is you're handing it over to the fraudsters, and they promise once you pay that, you will get your funds or your return in exchange, and then they disappear and you never collect those funds. So, you know, I mentioned this happens with crypto assets. That's pretty common in pig butchering. There is a big rise in it, which is why I wanted to talk about it. You will see the SEC has put out investor alerts, but also the FBI, FinCEN, a lot of federal regulators have put out alerts on this because it is really growing in interest. And it is not just one category, one type of audience that is being targeted. It can be anybody. One thing I've heard, because this can also happen with online dating sites. One thing I've heard is, well, on an online dating site, you are expecting to receive messages from people you don't know. That's the whole point. So what can you do? Well, my advice for that is the same, or my non-advice for that is the same as any other type of investment, whether it's fraud or legitimate, to do your own research. Don't just trust whether this is a friend you've known from elementary school or somebody you've just met. Don't just trust that the information they're telling you is accurate, because you don't know how much information they have done. You also don't know if their situation is the same as yours. They might have different risk tolerance. They might have different funds to invest versus save. They might have different goals. So kind of touching upon something Amy had mentioned at the beginning, you know, I'm saying, you know, do research even if your friends tell you about an investment, but also if a celebrity endorses something, don't just take the fact that you know the celebrity and you really like them. They could be paid for that endorsement, or even if it is a legitimate endorsement, their situation may not be the same as yours. Maybe they're not investing, they're just promoting it. Or even if they are, it might not match your particular financial situation. So you should always do your own research. Now, one other quick type of fraud I want to talk about is affinity fraud. And this is fraud targeted at particular groups of individuals. It's really targeting those who have something in common. And we're seeing an increase of this again with crypto assets, but we've seen it with all types of fraud as well. The fraudsters will go into a group and try to find something that they have in common and use that trust and that thing they have in common to get you to invest their money with you. We've seen members of the military targeted. We've seen country clubs targeted, or individuals associated with the same country clubs that are targeted. And it doesn't have to be an official membership. They could be reaching out to New England sports fans. So it can really be anything that you have something in common. So some red flags to look for here. Again, it's really do your own research. Are they promising high returns with no risk? That's a red flag. Are they able to provide you paper or documentation about the offering like you would get for a loan at the bank or for other investments? Are they trying to get you to invest based on your emotions? There's this concern, especially with crypto assets, about FOMO and the fear of missing out, which I get. If you talk to a friend and they've done really good with crypto assets, that could be a reason to invest. but you need to understand that you might be coming in at different times. And again, you might have different circumstances. And finally, as I said before, with fraudsters, sometimes they will let you take a little withdrawal. They will pay out. And that gives an air of legitimacy, not only to you, but to anybody else you told about this investment. So always do your own research. Now, unfortunately, there's several more frauds I could discuss, but because we're seeing crypto assets kind of tie into some of the more traditional frauds we've seen in the past, Ponzi schemes and pyramid schemes. But instead of giving you a long list, because I also want to talk about risks specific with crypto assets, I encourage you to go to investor.gov. You'll see a list of different types of frauds. And again, you'll also see investor bulletins on there, which our Office of Investor Education and Advocacy does a great job putting out when they are alerted to new scams through enforcement actions or otherwise. So now turning to our next to my next topic, which is about just some specific risks associated with crypto assets. Before I get into that, I want to ask our final polling question, which is, what is the primary means you use to research investments? And I mean any type of investment here. Is it internet searches, social media, a friend, a family member, financial professional? Again, any types of investments. We just want to get an idea of how you're researching investments. And we'll just leave that up for just a moment.
Yeah, Jen, just to pick up on one of the things that you had talked about, you know, when you speak with other people and they might be coming in or have started their investments at different times, the crypto globally space is up to about $1 trillion in value, but it goes in terms of the actual prices of any crypto assets, they're highly volatile because it's still a relatively immature market that is potentially fraught with misinformation. And so the prices do go up and down quite a bit. And so again, you could be the sucker sort of buys the top there, especially if you aren't doing your own research.
Thanks.
Right, and don't have the disclosures. Go ahead.
No, that's great. Actually, since you've brought that up, what I'll do is share my screen and show just a visual representation of what Peter was mentioning. And
in terms of, you know, the size of the market, I didn't mention this earlier, but the crypto market, for as much attention as it gets, it's actually quite small relative to other aspects or other parts of the securities market, which are, you know, dwarf crypto assets in market capitalization.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, and so as Peter was talking about, you know, investments in crypto asset securities can be exceptionally volatile and speculative, and the platforms where investors buy, sell, borrow, or lend these securities can lack important protections for investors. This is just a visual representation. Some of you might have heard about this crypto asset called Bitcoin. This chart shows right around from 2021 until kind of towards the end of 2022, and a bit of a roller coaster ride. At one point, it reached a high above 60K and had gone down to near 20,000, and that's in a relatively short period of time. So if you buy at the top of those swells, you can lose a lot of money. Understandably, if somebody has purchased, you know, at the bottom of the swells, they might be really promoting this, but once again, you really need to do your own research about where things stand. Good.
And then just sort of picking up on doing your own research, part of the problem that the SEC, again, has been bringing over 100 actions at this point in the crypto space, is that the companies, those who are offering the crypto assets, are not providing the requisite information to investors to be able to actually make the informed decision. So unlike sort of a traditional IPO or securities offering, where there would be a prospectus, there would be a lot of financial information, there'd be audited financial information. that type of information, that type of disclosure, so an investor could actually make an informed decision, are not being provided to investors in this space, because the offerers are seeking to just sell without actually registering their offerings.
Right. And if I could just piggyback off that, Peter, if you don't mind, you might also see sometimes a term called proof of reserves. And this is a term for those who have already invested or are thinking of investing. This is a term that crypto asset entities, including trading platforms and those issuing crypto asset securities, use to describe a voluntary method for offering evidence that an entity has sufficient reserves. That's the term proof of reserves, that an entity has sufficient reserves of assets to cover what is held for customers and or accounts at any given point in time. Sometimes it's portrayed as equivalent to audited financial statements, or even sometimes it might be portrayed as more precise than audited financial statements. But the reports and reviews that determine them are not equivalent. It's really used to satisfy customers that their funds are safe and available upon demand. It might be used in lieu of audited financial statements, but it's not the same. It's not as rigorous or comprehensive, and it might not provide the same level of assurance. There's a lot of management discretion that goes into how those are created.
Yeah, and to sort of pick up on that, I know there was a question about NFTs and what type of conduct or misconduct we're seeing. And there have been a couple of cases recently brought against the offers of NFTs. And what was found was that the offer was the offer and sale of investment contracts, so it was securities. And the requisite information was not being provided to those who invested in those NFTs. And so, and just to clarify, we're not a criminal agency, we're a civil agency, civil enforcement actions. And so what we've seen and what the cases that have been brought to date have been about not providing the disclosures for investors. And what that ultimately means is that is a way to sort of ferret out fraud too, right? Because if someone is obligated to provide those disclosures, it really tests someone's truthfulness in the statements they're making of all the claims and how much money and how much profits that somebody can make when they're actually having true disclosures and true financial statements that are being provided. And then there's a number of different cases involving where, again, it's the offer and sale of crypto asset securities, where the founder of the company, the issuer, is not providing those disclosures, and they're embezzling the money, frankly. So you have the company that's the offerer, and the founder might be just taking the money and using it for their own personal purposes, as opposed, and this is the allegations in the Hex case from this past summer, where there was hundreds of millions of dollars that were raised, and that it was being diverted away as alleged in the complaint. And I did want to touch upon briefly sort of an example of what happens when I talked about that there are crypto asset trading platforms, and you can get essentially a brokerage account. So in the traditional securities market, those functions are sort of broken up. You have the exchange over here, you might have a broker dealer, and then clearing agents or transfer agents. And as the chair of the commissioner, Gary Gensler, has said, is that in the crypto space, those are all being like bundled together, right? And that just develops risks where, and I think some of the allegations that have come up in the cases against Coinbase, Binance, so there are these inherent risks that come about when you take all these different functions of the securities market and you put them together. And I do think that the allegations that the SEC had in connection with FTX case is helpful to understand what can happen. Now, there's a current criminal trial that's ongoing involving Sam Bankman-Fried. By no means are we commenting on that at all. What I just wanted to highlight was some of the allegations the SEC made with respect to the FTX as a trading platform, which was essentially in the complaint that customer funds, where the customers had wanted to buy and sell crypto assets, were deposited and they were diverted from FTX, according to the complaint, these are the allegations, to this other enterprise called Alameda Research. And that ultimately was the diversion of hundreds of millions of dollars, because there was no real good controls as alleged in the complaint, and there was no disclosures really of this, right? So it's when you have, and Alameda was, again, according to the complaint, was acting as a market maker. It was providing the liquidity, and what you have ultimately alleged, as in Binance, are wash trades, where people are artificially, creating volume to entice investors to jump in and invest in different crypto assets. And so when I talked about earlier things that you can't necessarily trust, so I saw a lot of people are doing internet research, right? So if the information that the people on the internet are aggregating together is not accurate because it's being manipulated by people in the marketplace, because they're operating as unregistered exchanges or unregistered broker-dealers or unregistered clearing agents, then that just creates a lot of misinformation and a huge amount of risk for any investors, because the information you see you can't necessarily trust. So go ahead, Jen.
I was just going to add, so we had gotten a question in the Q&A section about, you mentioned wash trades, but there was also somebody that commented about pump and dump scams. And so I just wanted to add that the types of market manipulation, we're seeing market manipulation in crypto assets and crypto asset securities, wash trades, as Peter mentioned, but also pump and dump scams. And for those that are not familiar with that term, I just wanted to jump in to say that's typically when a fraudster will pump up the price of a security by putting out press releases or social media posts. Typically, they've already invested in that security. They put out all this information to pump up the price of it, and then they sell their shares they sell their shares. And then unfortunately, that will cause the price to decrease. And those who invested based on these press releases or these social media posts aren't aware of this. And now the value of their shares have gone down. So I just wanted to, for those that might not know what a pump and dump is, I saw that comment and just wanted to address that.
Yeah, and on that front, I mean, again, the commission has investigated and brought actions in a lot of cases where it involved fraudulent misrepresentations by the issuer, the promoter of a crypto asset that is saying, X, Y, and Z, and it turns out that those weren't true. So in terms of, using the terminology pump and dump, it might not be specifically a dump, as they're just trying to get rid of all of their crypto assets, but they're continuing to sell into the marketplace after they've made a number of misrepresentations into the marketplace to try to pump up the actual price or to inflate the price of the crypto asset as it's trading. And one of the things I did want to touch upon briefly before we close today was the notion of staking. I know that has become relatively, popular in some of the crypto marketplaces, and I just want to talk briefly about what it is and why it can be involved the offer and sale of securities. And so staking, so there are different, I talked about cryptographic technologies, and one of them is sort of the proof of stake consensus mechanism by which people will use they quote, stake their crypto asset to support what's referred to as a validator, who will make sure and check everything on the blockchain is recorded accurately and correctly. And essentially, there are a number of entities that have set up sort of businesses by which they'll take in people's crypto assets, hold and manage the crypto assets for them through the staking programs, and pay out an income or interest to those investors. And so, again, if you look back sort of originally at that sort of the Howey test, and so someone is taking they're investing their crypto assets, so it's something of value, they're investing it. It's in a common enterprise, meaning that there's somebody who's managing this crypto, staking program, so that all of those investors are going to benefit if they in fact get the rewards from the staking program. And then the offers and the promises by the people managing the staking program are that, look, you're going to get maybe 17%, maybe 5%, whatever the amount of returns are. If I manage this process properly, you're going to get paid out. And so that's where the expectation of profits. But again, these staking programs are oftentimes, they're not registered, and so they're not providing the full disclosures to investors. And some of the promises can be misrepresentations. And so there was a recent case involving staking that was brought against Kraken, as well as a litigated case. So these are just allegations involving Celsius and what was referred to as a earn program, by which, again, people would use their crypto assets to generate a yield or profits or income. And so I just wanted to make sure I touched upon that, because I know it's a popular program these days, that people think that they can just passively earn income from crypto assets that are sort of unregistered securities offerings.
Thanks. So we only have a few more minutes. So I was hoping to just briefly show you investor.gov, the website we had referred to, and I will share my screen with that. Here we go. A couple of people have asked about enforcement actions. So I also put a link in there as well. For the SEC enforcement actions in this particular space. But again, investor.gov is the website we've mentioned. There is a spotlight section for crypto assets on the homepage, so you can just go right and click on that. But for those of you who want to check out their investment professional, we briefly touched upon this, but I just wanted to show you how easy it is to do. All you need is to go to investor.gov and type in the name, and this will help you research whether your investment advisor or broker-dealer is registered. You can also change it and select to search for the firm, but it's pretty easy. Like I said, all you need is their name. So if you are working with a financial professional, just keep that in mind, that this is a particular website you can go to check if they are registered. Just want to do my plug for investor.gov. Great. So I think we only have a couple of minutes. It looks like we've gotten through most of the questions, but I think Peter and I are just double checking the chat and Q&A. If you do have any other questions, please feel free to email the Boston office at boston@sec.gov. You can also call us at 617-573-8800. And if you have a tip that you would like to file, the best way to do so is on our website at www.sec.gov/TCR. And I will put all that in the chat one more time while I think Sylvester is closing us out.
Thank you, Jen. Again, I just wanted to thank the Mass Office of Economic Empowerment for having us on, specifically Jessica and Amanda for organizing this. And again, Jen has given you a lot of information via the chat, but don't hesitate to call. If you can't remember the specifics, just Google us and you'll find us. And don't hesitate to call. This is a priority area for the commission staff. And so again, don't hesitate to call. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
Thank you so much to our distinguished guests for speaking and talking and educating us on this topic. If you do have more questions, again, in the exit survey, you'll be able to put down your questions or comments, and please do feel free to fill that out to let us know if this was something you liked. And thank you again to all who presented and all who attended. So have a great rest of your Tuesday.